we'll get started. So welcome to the Essentials of Care and Welfare webinar. My name's Sarah and I work here at Species 360 on the member training team alongside Josh. And I'll also be joined by Hannah from the product team who will be available to answer any questions as we go today. So we've taken on board feedback from talking to users, and we know that getting started in care and welfare can feel a little bit overwhelming. And we know that some users didn't even know the feature existed. So what we've tried to do is break down the webinar series into bite-sized steps. So today we'll focus on getting started in care and welfare and creating indicators. We'll follow up in a second webinar by focusing on templates. And in the final week, we'll be focusing on entering your care and welfare data and what this might look like over time. So the aim each week is to provide a live demonstration of the feature in use, and then we'll set aside time afterwards to answer any questions you might have that are a little bit more specific. But as Josh has mentioned, please use the Q&A section to ask questions that we can address in the Q&A afterwards. So what is care and welfare? Care and welfare is a module in ZIMS that's been around for over 5 years, and its main purpose is to standardize the way you track care and welfare for animals in your collection. But it does require some initial setup by you to get started. The hope is that care and welfare can help you turn daily recordings into usable data and help produce graphs similar to this. Now, this is a fictional example, but it shows how enclosure disturbances, highlighted by the orange bars, affected diet consumption and fecal quality for this animal. But this is just one of the ways that care and welfare can help you at your institution. The module follows WASA's 5-domain model, and it allows you to monitor nutrition, environment, physical health, behavior, and mental domain, and that will help you assess the welfare of animals in your care. But before you can get started in care and welfare, your local admin will need to make sure the module is turned on at your institution, as well as giving access to some of the roles used by your zoo or aquarium. So now I'll take a moment just to switch over to ZIMS so I can show you how your local admin can turn on care and welfare at your institution, as well as giving access to various roles. So you should be able to see my ZIMS homepage. And what I'll do now is show you how you can turn on care and welfare at your institution. As you can see, the care and welfare icon is already available in my home screen. But if this isn't something you can already see, then your local admin needs to head to Institution and Institutional Preferences. And in the ZIMS Accessibility and Features option, they can scroll down and turn on care and welfare as one of the optional ZIMS modules. So if this is turned off at your institution, that might explain, or that will explain, why you can't see care and welfare. So just make sure it's turned on and then save and apply for all users. As a local admin, you should be able to access care and welfare now, either from the Animals tab in the Start menu or as an icon on your home screen if you've made that available. If you are not a local admin and just a general user and still can't see care and welfare, that might be because your local admin needs to assign access to your role. So the way local admins can do this is by heading to Institution and down to My Institution. And they can open up the Husbandry and Administration roles box. And within this box, your local admin will be able to see all of the roles that are available for your institution. Any of the roles that have been created by Species 360 are indicated by this green tick. and any custom roles at your institution will be marked with a red cross, indicating that they aren't Species 360 template roles. Within the Species 360 roles, vet husbandry, user, and local admin, all of these roles will automatically have access to care and welfare. But if you rely more heavily on custom roles at your institution, you can click on that custom role and then click Actions and manage the role access. Open up Care and Welfare and make sure the module functionality is turned on for this role. If this isn't turned on, then users won't be able to see the Care and Welfare module still. I'll open up the functionality bar just so you can see some of these functionalities. And at a very minimum, at the bare minimum, you might want to give users access to be able to search and view for indicators, measurements, reports, and templates. Some of these terms or phrases might not mean very much to you if you haven't used care and welfare before, but by the end of this webinar series, you will be more familiar with terms like indicator and template, and you'll have a better understanding of what users need access to at your institution. As reference, a local admin will have access to all of these actions within care and welfare, but you might just want to give a keeper access to fewer rights, and you might only want to give them the ability to add measurements or record their observations, and not give them the access to create indicators or create templates. But this will all be determined by the level of access your institution wants to provide. So once you've made these edits, you can save, and then that will be applied to that custom role. So now I'll head back to the presentation where we can learn a little bit more about the concepts behind care and welfare before we get stuck in and create any indicators. And I will mention before we move on that if you still don't have access to care and welfare after this webinar, but you do have an active ZIMS account, then you can make use of the Learn ZIMS environment where you can practice using any of these features without affecting live data. And I can send information on how to access this along with the recording of the webinar. So before you get started in care and welfare, you'll need to consider some of the following questions. Do you need to legally record welfare for licensing? And what's required for your accreditation? Having a read through of the accreditation and licensing guidelines for your region might help you determine where to begin in terms of recording welfare in a standardized way. Who will decide what you want to record, and who will define the indicators to measure welfare? So that could be a combination of people, including welfare officers, curators, and registrars. It could be a vet or maybe a head keeper. And again, this will vary depending on the size and structure of your institution. Now, who's recording the data and how will they collect this? So this will pertain to whether keepers are recording observations in their diaries or if students are carrying out behavioural observations. And all of this will determine how you create indicators and templates in care and welfare further down the line. Finally, who will be entering the data into care and welfare? Will this be a registrar transcribing from keeper records, or will you allow keepers to add data directly to the care and welfare templates? After considering any of these questions, you'll be ready to get started in care and welfare. So using the care and welfare module can be split up into 4 distinct steps. First, you'll create indicators, and these are where you'll set the definitions of the welfare you want to assess, whether that's monitoring enclosure use, stereotypical behaviours, fecal quality, or essentially anything that you're recording daily anyway. The indicators will be the way you standardise these observations. Once you've created indicators, you'll assign them to templates, and templates help compile indicators into one area, ready for data entry. So a keeper's finished their day and have recorded a whole range of welfare-related observations, and now they can open the template that was made specifically for their animals and record all that information in one place. Further down the line, you might want to extract this information and create graphs similar to what I showed at the start of this webinar, and see if there are any patterns between the welfare indicators you're recording. And this is where you'll use the animal graphing tool to visualize some of this data. But as I mentioned before, today's focus is going to be step 1, indicators. So indicators are where you'll define each aspect of the welfare you want to track and assess. And indicators are categorized by the WAS's 5 domains. So you'll pick whether you're assessing behavior, environment, mental domain, nutrition, or physical health. Then you'll need to add a description of what it is you're monitoring. And then you'll pick a value type that you'll record, that you'll use to record these observations. Next, we'll take a closer look at the types of things you might create indicators for. So, as I mentioned before, for each indicator you create, you'll choose a category based off the 5 domains. In the behavior category, you could assess things like activity level, pacing, aggression, as well as reproductive or parenting behaviors. And this is a part that's defined by you, so any behaviors that you want to monitor can have their own indicator created. The value type you choose is what will determine how in-depth you track this. So in this example, by taking a look at the table below, if I wanted to create an indicator for pacing, a binary value type will simply record whether pacing was observed or not. A numerical scale, where you set the definition for the scale, can provide a bit more information. A numerical value could allow you to record the number of times the animal was observed pacing. And a percentage can be used to track the percentage of time this animal spent pacing. Again, it's completely up to you to decide what's feasible at your collection and how informative you need this to be. I've repeated similar slides for the other categories as well. So for environment, you might track an animal's enclosure access or how external impacts such as construction work or extreme weather conditions are affecting your animals. And again, in the table below, you can see how differently this can be monitored depending on the value type selected. For mental domain, you could choose to track the animal's attitude or general disposition, and this could be as simple as recording whether it was typical or atypical for that animal. For nutrition, you can track food consumption or choices. Using the care and welfare module to record this information is less precise than, say, using the feed log module, where exact feed items and food amounts can be recorded. But instead, care and welfare offers a way to record visual estimates. So you can say things like, my macaques ate 80% of their diet today. And finally, physical health can be used to track evidence of discomfort, fecal observations, mobility, as well as things like respiration rate and physical appearance. So this is quite a lot of information, and it might not make much sense whilst it's out of context. So to put it into context, I'll move over into ZIMS, and we can see how this translates when we're creating welfare indicators. And we'll open up the care and welfare module and look at how to create some indicators. So to access the care and welfare module, you head to Animals and can select Care and Welfare. And when you initially open the Care and Welfare module, it will open on the templates page. And if you've never used Care and Welfare before, this will be completely blank. So you won't have any of these templates available like I do. But as I mentioned, we're focusing on indicators today. And when you're in the indicators area, you will see a whole range of different indicators already available. And these will be available whether you've used care and welfare before or not, because all of these ones that are currently here have been pre-made by Species 360. So you can use the scroll bar on the right-hand side to search through them. And you can see that there's a wide range of different indicators available. We also have some filter options at the top, so you can filter by behavior, and you only see behavior-related indicators. You could change this to nutrition or any of the categories that we talked about. If you clear that filter option, you'll see all of the indicators again. You can also filter them by their name. So if you want diet-related indicators, you can search for them here. And once you start creating indicators at your institution, you'll be able to search by staff member names here as well. So within the indicators page, there are 3 ways to set up indicators. You can configure existing indicators. So these are the indicators that are created by Species 360. You can create an indicator from scratch that fits your needs exactly. And you can also accept shared indicators from other institutions. We'll start with one of the simpler ways of creating an indicator, and that is just by configuring one of these available indicators that have been pre-made by Species 360. So if I search for external impacts, I can see that this indicator already has a category, it already has a name, and it already has a description, which is that this is an assessment of stimuli, temporary or permanent, such as adjoining animal enclosures or construction noise and storms that might affect animal welfare. And all we need to do is configure this indicator so we can use it at our institution. So I'll click Please Configure, and then I can select a value type. In this example, I'm going to choose binary scale. So what this means is I'm using a binary scale, so yes or no, to assess external impacts and their effects on the animal. So I can add an explanation for this value type. And I'm going to just copy and paste this across. So the explanation is a binary scale that is defined as typical. For example, there were no external disturbances, and atypical, that external disturbances were present. So we can define the scale for this next. And again, what this binary scale is allowing us to record is whether an external impact was present or whether it wasn't present on a set date. So yes will be equal to atypical in this example, and we want to record that a disturbance was present. And no could be equivalent to typical, meaning that no disturbances were present. You can also set expected values for your indicators. So if you expect that there won't be any disturbances and this is the value you expect to see most days, then anything outside of this will highlight or will flag to your keepers or users when they're recording this data or their observations. And this will all make a little bit more sense when we get to the templates and the data entry webinars where you can see what it looks like to actually use these indicators. You can also leave it with no expected values at all and simply click Save. So now the indicator doesn't say please configure, it now says binary scale, and this indicator is now available to use in your templates and start adding data for your animals. And it's as simple as that to configure. So I'll show you how to configure once more. So this time we'll configure an indicator for nutrition, for diet consumption. I'm going to click please configure. And this time we'll use a percentage value type to assess this. And this indicator is an assessment of how much of the daily diet appears to have been consumed by the individual or group. And my explanation for the value type, which I'm going to put below here, is a percentage value which indicates what proportion of the diet has been consumed. So when a keeper comes to record this in the template, they'll just type what percentage of the diet they visually assess has been consumed by this animal. So they can write anything from 0 to 100%, and it's a free text entry field. In the next screen, we will select the expected values. And if you have no expectations for what an animal should eat, you can simply leave it at no expected value. But you can also add taxonomic exceptions. So if there are certain species or taxonomy that you expect to eat or consume a certain proportion of their diet, you can add those as taxonomic exceptions. So I'll click Next to add one. So in this example, we could add that for primates, you expect them to eat 80 to 100% of their diet. And if a user records a species of primate has only eaten 60% of their diet, this will flag or highlight as being out of the norm for that species. If I want to save this indicator, I can simply untick the box for add another taxonomic exception because I don't want to add any more exceptions, and click Save. And now this indicator is, again, it's ready to be used in any of the templates and it's available for all your species. So next I can show you how to create an indicator from scratch. So if you've searched through all of the indicators that are available from Species 360, but you find that some of them don't meet your needs, you can create an indicator that is completely determined by your institution. So you click the green plus icon over here, and you can click Add New. And here you can see we have a lot more options to complete. Because we're not configuring an existing indicator, we're creating something from scratch. You can make your indicators available to other ZIMS institutions by clicking here. But if you just want it to be available for your staff members, just leave that box unchecked and it will only be available locally. And for this example, we'll select behavior as the category. We'll call the indicator non-typical aggression. And the description that we can apply will be aggressive behavior that seems atypical for this species in terms of intensity. And in this description box, you can write anything you like. This can be as in-depth as you need it to be, or it can be really simplistic like this. Then you'll select a value type. In this example, we'll choose a numeric scale. And here you can also make this indicator only available for certain taxonomic groups, which you would be able to do by following the next step, or you can make it available for all animals at your institution. If it's a really generic indicator, you might just want it available for all animals. If it's a really specific indicator, you might narrow it down and only make it available for certain taxa or certain species. And again, we'll add an explanation around the value type and a little bit about the indicator that you're assessing. So the explanation I've put in is a numerical scale to assess displays of atypical aggression in this species. A higher rating on the scale indicates increased intensity of atypical aggression. Next, you can then define the scale. And the scale can go into the minuses if you need it to. But for this example, we'll leave it as 0 as the minimum. And the maximum can go as high as you need it to as well. But we'll leave it at 3. And if half points are useful for your scale, you might use half points for things like fecal scoring. Then you can have that ticked as well. For the numeric scale, you can assign definitions to these numbers so they actually mean something. And what I'll do is add some definitions in here. So 0 is equal to no signs of aggression. 1 on the scale could be equal to mild aggression. 2 could be equal to moderate aggression. And 3 could be equivalent to severe aggression. You can again set a expected value so that anything recorded outside of your expected value will flag when your keepers or your users are recording data in the template, or you can leave that unticked as well. And when you click save, that will be added to your indicators, ready to be used in any of your templates. And now you can see that the logo next to this indicator indicates that it's local, whereas the ones that were created by Species 360 are used globally. The final way to add an indicator into your local indicators or into your list of indicators is to, again, click the green plus icon. And here you'll have a list of indicators that have been shared by various institutions. If you don't want to see the indicators, you can hide them from that list. But if you want to accept them and use them as indicators at your institution, you can click this little plus icon to add them to your local indicators. So it gives you a little bit of information about the indicator that you're accepting. You can click next, and all you have to do is set an expected value if you want to, which you can set your value to 0. So this is an indicator that's going to track regurgitation and reingestion, an assessment of the frequency of atypical regurgitation and reingestion in a species where this is not part of their normal feeding mechanisms. And the value type that's being used to assess this is numeric value. So this means that the keepers or the users can enter any value that they see. So they're not picking from a scale like the numeric scale. They can write that this animal has had 1 or 2 or 10 or 11 different bouts of regurgitation and reingestion events. So you can set the expected value to 0, and then anytime that this is recorded for an animal, it will flag when it's been recorded in any of your templates, and you can click save, and we can close that. And if I want to search for the recently accepted indicator, I can see it here. It's a shared indicator. It's now available in your list of indicators and can be used in your templates for recording data for your animals. So one of the last things I will mention is that once indicators are in use and data is associated with them, we highly recommend that you don't edit them. So if I load up an indicator that has been configured and it's already in use in a template, and a staff member has recorded data associated with this for an animal, if I click edit, I'll be given a notification that lets me know that this indicator's in use and that changes made to this indicator will also apply to previously recorded observations. If I choose to continue, if I click yes, I will be able to edit the explanation, and I'll be able to edit the definitions. And obviously, if you edit the definitions for an indicator that is already being used and has data associated with it, if you change the definitions and for suddenly becomes poor attention and not focused, this will completely change what users have recorded previously for this indicator. So I would recommend clicking cancel and not editing any indicators that are currently in use. But if you are midway through creating your indicators and you haven't used them in templates and no data has been associated with them, if you click on edit, you won't be given a pop-up warning because this isn't in a template yet, and you'll be able to change everything about this indicator. So you can change its value type and you can change its expected values, and it doesn't matter because this isn't in use yet. So I think that covers pretty much all aspects of indicators within care and welfare. So I will stop sharing my screen now and I'll open the floor to any of the questions that have popped up in the question and answers.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I'll stop the recording too at this time just so we can pivot to that.